Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. My name is Arini Puspita and I'm from Faculty of Law 2017. So today I'm going to represent my presentation with the title of the arrangement of space tourism activities based on international spatial law and the implementation of space tourism activities. For the background of the problem itself, what is space tourism? Space tourism is a commercial space activity that is currently popular and in great demand. Space tourism is offered to feel the sensation of being an astronaut without being an astronaut. The exploration and the exploitation of space at the beginning of its development is for research and development or military section. But along with the development of space and science technology, special activities are mostly carried out for commercial purposes. For the identification of the problem itself, the first one is how is the regulation of space tourism activities based on international law? The second one is how is the implementation of arrangement for the organizers of space tourism activities? How is the regulation of space tourism activities based on international space law? As recommended by experts in the field of international space law, in writing entitled Between Heaven and Earth, the Legal Challenges of Human Space Travel states that a new multilateral treaty should be developed to establish a system of liability that attach to those private operators conducting space tourism activities. This new regime must also address third-party liability, and this will also necessitate the development of an adequate space tourism insurance market. So basically, the International Space Law has the Liability Convention or Convention on International Liability for Damage Caused by Space Object 1972 and the United Nations Treaties and Principles on Outer Space 1967. So for the Liability Convention itself, the Liability Convention was born as a further elaboration of Article 7 of the 1967 Space Treaty, which has laid the foundation for the basic principle of international responsibility for the launching state to third state in the event of damage or loss caused by the launching state of space object. In this 1972 Liability Convention, there are four scopes of point of view. The first one is geographic, object or material, functional or personal, and time scope. In the Article 2 of the 1972 Liability Convention, it states that a launching state shall be absolutely liable to pay compensation for damage caused by its space object on the surface of the Earth or to aircraft in flight. Ladies and gentlemen, it is clear that the 1972 Liability Convention has a habitable area or can be applied to losses caused by celestial bodies, whether the losses occur in the land area, sea area, airspace, and also applies to outer space and the open sea. Okay, next is how is the implementation of arrangement for organizers space tourism activities? So I'm going to compare about two conventions between Outer Space Treaty 1967 and the Liability Convention 1972. They are both have the same state that the state is directly responsible for compensation if space activities carried out by private parties cause damage or loss to other parties. Okay, next is state responsibility is regulated in the Article 7 of Outer Space Treaty and Article 3 of the Liability Convention. So the Article 7 of Outer Space Treaty say that each state party to the treaty that launches or procures the launching of an object into outer space, including the moon and other celestial bodies, and each state part from whose territory or facility an object is launched is internationally liable for damage to another state party to the treaty or to its natural juridical persons by such object or its component parts on the Earth, in airspace, or in outer space, including the moon and other celestial bodies. And the Article 3 of the Library Convention say that in the event of damage being caused elsewhere than on the surface of the Earth to a space object of one launching state or to persons or property on board such as space object of another launching state, the latter shall be liable only if the damage is due to its fault or the fault of person for whom it is responsible. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we can conclude that the first one, the state is responsible for damages for losses arising from aerospace activities by non-state entities. The second one is the responsibility is absolute liability if the losses is experienced on the surface of the Earth or in space. And the third is these obligations depend on the fault of the state if the losses of other countries or citizens of other countries are sovereign in space. So my conclusion and suggestion for my essay today is based on its implementation in Outer Space Treaty and Liability Convention above, the state is directly responsible for compensation if space activities carried out by private parties cause damage or loss to other parties. This responsibility remains even though the state is not actually involved in space activities carried out by the private sector, but the state certainly does not want to bear the fulfillment of responsibility that should be borne by the private sector, but the international space law itself does not regulate the liability of the private sector itself. These sectoral arrangements are often not fully in line with international space law, so this problem is particularly closely related to accountability arrangement. My suggestion for this problem is the implementation that must be applied is how to make comprehensive arrangements so that each regulation can be codified appropriately. International space laws should regulate more clearly the entire accountability between the state and private parties as well as space tourists. And also the regulation is not sectoral in order to comply with international space law. So, ladies and gentlemen, maybe that's all for me, and I hope these my presentation can give us another perspective about outer space law. And I'm sorry for if there's any mistake from me. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.